Asia, 1st century AD. The strange references of Apollonius Tyaneus. Apollonius Tyaneus, 15 to 98 AD, who was a Greek Neo-Pythagorean philosopher from Tyana in the Roman province of Cappadocia in Asia Minor. That's around basically just southeast of today's Istanbul in Turkey. He was an orator and a philosopher around the time of Jesus Christ and was compared to Jesus by Christians in the 4th century and by other writers in modern times. He was a philosopher. Any information we have about Apollonius comes from Philostratus. Philostratus owes his fame mainly to the 8 books. They were the ones in Tyaneus Apollonius, homeland of Apollonius, was Tyana, and Greek city in Cappadocia. His father had the same name and was descended from an ancient generation whose roots go back to the first settlers of the city. He traveled throughout the area and then known world, and through his descriptions were able to gather important information about the time of the 1st century AD, but also amazing facts about the distant past. Facts concerning the birth of Apollonius. When Apollonius' mother was about to give birth to him, the ghost of the Egyptian demon Proteus appeared before her, about whom Homer says that he was changing forms. He was a shapeshifter, in other words. Without fear, he asked what she would give birth to, and he replied, "Me." "Who are you?" she asked. "Proteus, the Egyptian god," he replied. I don't need to explain who Proteus was. Wise to those who had read the poets. He had various forms, such were constantly changing. It was not possible to arrest him, and as it seems, he knew and foresaw everything. We must keep in mind Proteus because throughout history it will be proven that Apollonius had the ability to protect more than Proteus and escape many dangers and difficulties with greater ease. In cases where he had been suffocated, it's said that he was born in a meadow near the place where his sanctuary now stands. We must not ignore how he was born. Okay, this is all from ancient writings of ancient Greeks, so this is what we're reading now. So, when his mother arrived at the time of the birth of the baby, she dreamed that she had to go down to the meadow to pick flowers, and when she got there, the slaves were picking flowers, and she fell asleep on the grass. Some swans that lived there danced around her as she slept and raised their wings as usual. They all made a sound together. There was a breeze in the meadow, and she jumped over the ode and gave birth. Any surprise can cause premature birth. Locals say that at the time of the birth, lightning appeared that seemed to fall to the ground, but it remained meteoric and disappeared high into the ether. In other words, high up into the air. With all this, I think the gods wanted to reveal and point out the glory of this man, his superiority over all the earth, and that there they mourn in front of the water, confessing their similarities. The locals considered Apollonius to be the son of Zeus, but Zeus is one of the pantheons of the top god of the ancient Greeks, the multitheistic gods. But he called himself the son of Apollonius, similar to the gods. There is water from the oath of Zeus near Tyana, as they say, and they called it Asvameo. An unexpected meeting with the awesome Embusa. Again, we're reading from ancient writings. Entering the mythology as a ghost of the escort of the goddess Hecate, it fed on human flesh and could take any form. How gruesome. Now, after crossing the Caucasus, they say they saw 4 tall, dark-skinned people. As soon as they crossed the Indus River, they saw others, 5 cubits tall. A cubit is what? Is about 50 centimeters. That's 2.5 meters. That's about 10 feet tall. Okay? As soon as they crossed, they saw others 5 cubits tall. From the course of the river to it is worth mentioning the following. They proceeded under a bright moonlight when the ghost of Embusa appeared, which changed forms or disappeared completely. Apollonius understood what was happening. He insulted Embusa himself and told his comrades to do the same because that is the cure for this attack. The ghost disappeared, running and making loud noises as ghosts do. About reincarnation? What do you think about the soul? Apollonius then asked. What Pythagoras has handed over to you and we to the Egyptians. Apollonius said, so you could say that just as Pythagoras said it was Euphorbus, so before you came to this body you were one of the Trojans or the Achaeans or anyone. Then the Indian replied, Troy was then destroyed by the Achaean navy. You have been ruined by your words about it. You consider brave only those who took part in the Trojan campaign, and you overlook many and divine men that your homeland in Egypt and India have shown. But because you asked me about my previous body, tell me which of the enemies and defenders of Troy do you consider the most admirable? Achilles, he replied, son of Peleus and Thetis, whom Homer praises above all the Achaeans for his beauty and greatness and for his great achievements. He still considers men like Aiada and Nereus admirable and praises them as beautiful and brave, but after Achilles, it simply came to our notice then to consider my ancestor, or rather my previous body. This is how Pythagoras considers Euphorbus. The ghost of the Ganges. Again, we're reading from the ancient texts. Once upon a time, he continued, the Ethiopians, who are of Indian descent, lived here. Ethiopia did not exist. The borders of Egypt were beyond Meroe and the waterfalls, and there were the springs and estuaries of the Nile. At that time, when the Ethiopians lived here under the rule of King Gigi, their land was sufficiently nourished and their gods took care of them. But when they killed this king, neither the rest of the Indians considered them immaculate, nor did this place allow them to remain. Their sowing was destroyed before it germinated well. The women were expelled, their flocks could not find food, and wherever they went to settle, the land receded. Also, the ghost of the Ganges appeared on their way and disturbed them. He left them alone only when the protagonists and perpetrators of the murder cleared the earth of their death. And this Ganges was 10 cubits tall, did not resemble any man in beauty, and was a child of the river Ganges. His father, who was flooding India, ran to the Red and reconciled him to the earth. The Red Sea, that is. That is why, as long as he lived, the earth produced abundant crops. When he died, he became vengeful. At one point, Philostratus mentions a description of Apollonius for his encounter with the spirit of the dead Achilles in the ancient tomb where the hero's ashes were kept. Since others have shown great interest in this discussion and are willing to listen to him, Apollonius said what the Indians say when they ask the hero's Achilles. I said, most people say you are dead, but I also disagree with Pythagoras, who is the ancestor of my wisdom. If there is truth in our faith, show it to us. If you used my eyes as witnesses to your existence, you could benefit greatly from them. At the same time, there was a short earthquake around the mound, and a young man dressed in a Thessalian cloak appeared. His form did not seem arrogant, as Achilles is considered by some. Although he looked awesome, he did not lose the glow of his face. As far as his beauty is concerned, it seems to me that he still has not found a worthy praiser, although much had been said by Homer about it, because it really can't be described in words, and it will be underestimated by anyone who tries to praise him rather than honor him as he deserves. When I first saw him, he looked as much like I said, but he kept getting taller and twice as tall until he looked 12, when he got his complete shape and the beauty kept growing along with his dimensions. 12 cubits, that is. He said that he never cut his hair, but kept it intact for Spherios because of all the rivers. At first he considered it, but his beard had just begun to come out. Addressing me, he said, quote, I am glad to have met you because I have long waited to meet such a man. The people of Thessaly, that's northern Greece, have not brought offers to my grave for a long time. Of course, I don't deserve to be angry so far, because if I get angry, he will find them worse than the one that once found the Greeks here. I only kindly advise him not to neglect the proper ones and consider the Trojans worse than these here, who, although they lost so many men because of me, offer me sacrifices in public, and the first harvest of products of every season, and with an olive branch they ask for reconciliation, but never I will not accept. End quote. Now the breach of their oaths to me, he says, will never allow Ilio to regain his old form or flourish, something that other ruined cities have achieved. His condition will never be better than it would have been if he had just taken over yesterday. In order for the people of Thessaly not to have the same fate, make sure to report to their assembly what I have told you. I'll go and tell them, I replied, because my purpose is to save them. But I too, Achilles, want something from you. I see, he told me. It's obvious you want to ask something about the Trojans. So ask me 5 things, whatever you want, and fate allows. I first asked if he was buried, as the poets say. I'm lying dead here, he told me, as was the most pleasant thing for me and Patroclus. We died very young, and the ashes of both of us are in golden amphora, as if we were one. Regarding the lamentations of the Muses and the Nereids, who say that they were done for my sake, I have the following to say. The Muses never came here, while the Nereides are still here do come frequently. Then I asked if Polyxene was slaughtered over his grave, and he told me that this is true, but that she was not slaughtered by the Achaeans. She only came with her will to the tomb and giving great value to love. Of this and that he fell on a standing sword. She fell on a standing sword. The third question was whether Helen, the beautiful Helen, had actually come to Troy, or whether all of this was Homer's case, his imagination. And he told me, for a long time we are deceived by sending envoys to the Trojans and fighting for her sake, because we thought she was there, but she had been in Egypt, in Proteus's house, since Paris kidnapped her. When we were convinced of the truth, we continued to fight for Troy itself, so as not to leave shamed. I dared a fourth question and said that it was questionable how Greece produced so many great men that Homer mentions concentrating on the war against Troy. And Achilles said, even the barbarians were not far behind us, so much so that virtue flourished throughout the earth. The fifth question was, what happened? And Homer ignores Palamedes, or did he know him and keep him out of your story? And Achilles replied, if Palamedes did not come to Troy, neither did Troy ever exist. So, the beautiful Helen was whisked off to Egypt. But to save face, the people that were fighting against Achilles and the people who were fighting against Troy fought against Troy anyway to save face and not to be shamed. What a revelation! What a revelation! Okay, this is from Wikipedia, Flavius Philostratus, published by Cactus, and I've translated this from Greek into English for you. So please tell me what you think. Thank you for your comments. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.